My name is Chad McKinney, and I'm a gameplay programmer here in the Los Angeles studio. I'm going to be talking about interaction linking and the room system. So this level demonstrates the room system and atmosphere containers. The room system and atmosphere containers are used to create boundaries for our space stations and ships and places in the game where we want there to be pressurization of different gas levels. It's something that we've, to date, faked in the game with the airlocks, and if you go into an airlock without a spacesuit, you'll die. But the system in place that does that isn't very general, and it doesn't allow for emergent gameplay. What we're working on now is a system that is a more proper way to handle pressurization and depressurization in the game. And it's still pretty early days for this. As you can see, this test level just has some basic boxes and shapes that define the room volumes. And we have some test assets in here just to play around with it. The spheres that are inside these volumes represent the atmospheric composition. So here, the blue spheres are oxygen, and the red spheres indicate that that room has been filled with carbon dioxide. The room system uses three main types of entities. One is the atmosphere container, which is the thing that has the atmospheric composition. So for instance, if I come over here and look at this debug output, I can see that the composition in this particular room is 0.8% oxygen and 0.12% carbon dioxide. But if I walk into space, I have nothing. There's no atmosphere out here. So the atmosphere container is a very important part. The next one is the room. The room indicates the volume and the boundaries for the atmosphere that's connected to it. Later on, this will also be used to indicate security and power connectivity. But for now, we're just working with atmosphere. So that's atmosphere containers, rooms, and then the third important type is the room connector. So here, there's the yellow box around this door. This yellow box indicates that there's a connection between this room here and outer space. Now, the room system uses these room connectors to try to create pressure equalization between different areas, between the two spaces that the room connector connects. In this instance, the room connector is connecting a room to outer space. So if I open this door, the oxygen levels in the room are going to drop. If I walk into the room, we can get some debug output to see that, yes, the pressure in the room is dropping rather quickly. And the pressure in the adjacent rooms is also dropping, although less quickly because it has to traverse through the room connectors. Now, having a system like this is really nice because it allows for more emergent gameplay. I could, for instance, close this door and close this door off and keep the pressure, or keep the depressurization localized to a certain space. Or I could reopen the door and allow for the oxygen levels in the other room to fill up this space so that the people on this side of the space station don't die. As you can tell, the room system is still pretty early days. We just now hooked it up to audio, and we plan on hooking it up to the player behavior and visuals soon. But for now, we're still developing it, and I look forward to having this into Star Citizen, which I think is going to allow for some rather interesting gameplay. So by now, you guys have started to see the new interaction system start to come into 2.5, as well as the new content that we've been putting out, for instance, in the demos at Gamescom and CitizenCon. The new inner thought system gives contextual information for objects and items in the game that you're interacting with. One useful tool that we use with those interactions are something called interaction links. Interaction links allows the designers to create relationships between items so that you can build up more interesting behavior from smaller and more modular pieces. As an example, here in this test level, I've set up a door that is connected to a laptop and a power generator. In any given level, you can have a door that has certain interactions like open and close, but you might not want the player to actually directly interact with the door. For gameplay reasons, you might decide that it's useful to have the player actually interact with something that's next to it. In this instance, I have this laptop here. The laptop has an interaction for an open and close, which is defined in DataForge. In DataForge, we can assign certain values, such as sendable, linkable, and locked by links. And this just means that we can actually link this interaction to something else. Linkable indicates that it can be linked to by a different interaction. And locked by links means that we're going to share the locking, which is the semantic locking and unlocking of the interaction. So here we've set up this laptop, and in the interaction links panel, we've created a link which has its source output open connected to the input doors interaction of open, and the same thing with close. This means that if I go into the game, instead of going up to the door and interacting with it, instead I can come up to this terminal and use the open interaction, which will then open the door. I can also use the close interaction, and back and forth. And as I use these interactions, you can see that the text, the contextual information given to the player actually updates in real time. And this happens because of the semantic state sharing that's implicit in the interaction links. Now, this doesn't have to be with just something that we walk up to and interact with, but anything that supports interaction links. I've also set up a proximity sensor here that will open the door and close the door whenever I've entered the area here. So if I walk in, the door opens. And if I walk out, the door will close again. What's nice about this is it allows us to have self-contained behavior. So for instance, in this case, a proximity sensor, which then can be hooked up to something else to build up a more complex behavior, which is walking into an area and a door opening. But we can hook up the same proximity sensor to anything else. For instance, I could hook up the same proximity sensor to a trap that maybe opens a door and sucks out somebody into space, where they would then die. So yeah, that's the basics of interaction linking. You set up interactions in DataForge, and then create interaction links in the interaction link panel, and then just use them in the game. So that's interaction linking and the room system. Still a work in progress. There's a lot of work to be done with this stuff, but I look forward to working on it, continuing going forward.